How you doing? Kyle Muharrem. I'm going to give the video on the Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Um, I want to start off by asking a question, and I just want to see how you guys react to it. So, really quick, what weighs more, 100 pounds of feathers or 100 pounds of bricks? The correct answer is they're the same because they're both 100 pounds of both. However, intuitively, many of you might have said that 100 pounds of bricks is heavier because your first reaction to the question is he's asking about bricks and feathers. Obviously, the bricks are going to weigh more than the feathers. So, Daniel Kahneman argues a lot about this intuition versus slow thinking based on what you've learned kind of reaction. So S1, S2, thinking fast, thinking slow. S1 is the fast thinking, which is all intuition, instinct, quick things that you don't really think about. You just kind of do them based on instinct. And then S2 are things where you learn them over a period of time and you sit back and you think about it and you figure it out in your head so that you don't make a wrong decision. So there's less room for error. Right, so a couple of the notes that I've made here on my sheets are, for example, System 2. Slow thinking. Deliberate and conscious. Naturally feel we are in control. What we have for dinner, what we buy, when we perform math. So System 2, Kahneman also says there's a lot of logistics in math because those are certain things that you have to learn and really practice and sit back and think. Like a complicated mathematical question like 74 times 23, you wouldn't just instinctively be able to say that. You'd have to sit down and think about it and then give an answer. However, I do have an argument to that later because he also uses an example where 2 plus 2, if I say what 2 plus 2 is, you say 4 instinctively right away. So why is it that one part of the math is instinctive and the other one isn't? System 1 is the automatic, unconscious, instinctive way of acting to things. So it's survey environment and it processes incoming stimuli, informed by natural drives and instincts. It can be learned through association. One thing that he does argue is that the S1 can be improved on based on learning. You can learn how to not necessarily, I don't want to say improve your S1, but learn how to control it. So more people tend to be more impulsive than others, and that's just based on how you were raised. And the S1, another thing that he says, is it relies on heuristics, general rules and guidelines, and those heuristics really are based on the environment you grew up in. They are designed to work in an environment where we evolved, which may be different than current. So maybe where you learn these heuristics, where you learn how to react to things, may not necessarily be how you need to react and think about those things in the current state, in the current time where you are, which can obviously become a problem, and that's where you have to learn how to slow it down. You know, an S1 example would be like, oh, I look at that person and I see they have black hair and I automatically know they have black hair. So the System 1 realizes and System 2 then helps solve the problem. So if you have the control to instinctively realize something and then be like, okay, whoa, I need to sit back and think about this, then you've trained your mind to use your slow thinking, your S2, appropriately. Now, if you don't know how to do that and you act based on instinct when you should sit back and think about something, then that is a lack of practice. It doesn't necessarily make you stupid because it goes back to that question I asked about the 100 pounds of feathers or bricks. You're not dumb for saying that it might have been the bricks that weighed more. It's just that you acted based on what you learned, which is bricks weigh more than feathers, and you didn't really think about it, rather than if you would have sat back and thought for a second, they're the same because they're both 100 pounds. So some people just need to learn how to control it more than others do. One thing to note is that System 1, the instinctive part, is not good for long-term decision making or planning. That is all system 2. If you instinctively do something for long term, it just won't work because instinct and long term don't really coincide with each other. It's two different ends of the spectrum, and you need to be able to realize those things. S1 is very in the moment thinking, which can be good and can be bad. System 2 an important thing is system 2 knows when to override system 1. So system 2, if you train it well enough, it knows system 1 is being irrational right now. I need to step back and think about this and react the possible way. However, system 2 sometimes does not know when it is being influenced by system 1. So if you have trained it enough to realize it and stop it, that's great. But sometimes you might sit back in system 2 and think that everything is figured out in your mind, but in reality it's system 1 really telling you what to do based on your instinct, and then you think out based on your instinct. And an example that I use that I saw in a video about his book is they use George Bush and Obama. So they think that George Bush, or he thinks that George Bush is a very, I wrote this down exactly, I wanted to find this. I don't know where it is, so I'm just going to say what I remember. George Bush was a very S1 functional person. He worked on instincts, and he said it multiple times when he was being interviewed. You know, I go with my gut's always right, my gut, this is always correct. And that type of person, for example, going into war the way he did, that type of person did not sit back and use their S2 to figure out why they should or shouldn't go to war. What they did was they instinctively used their gut and said, we need to go to war. Doesn't really matter the reasons. We think it's this because on instinct I'm assuming that these are the reasons we need to go to war. And then what they do is they use their S2 to support their S1. So the S1 is manipulating the S2. We need to go to war, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you why we need to go to war based on my gut. Like, it's not let me sit back and see what are the pros and cons of going to war. Okay, it's probably not good to do this, so let's not do it. This is a decision that's been made, now let's find reasons to support it, which is completely contrary to what Obama does. He's on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, which sometimes, according to the video, gives him this notion of being a bad president, a bad leader, because people expect leaders to have a quick and solid answer to any problem without having to think about it. And that's why sometimes he comes off as I want to say soft president. People don't think he acts as quick as he should. S1 is really how I tend to think about it. Is S1 is a very effortless kind of thing. It just happens. It's instinctive, right to the point. S2 is an effortful. You have to sit. You have to think about it. You have to know why it is that you're doing this and react based on that. Another thing to note, S2 is not good at catching or fixing errors. S2 is naturally also very poor with probability and stats. So this is when learning comes into play. S2 can really be strongly developed by learning. You know, you go to school, you learn statistics. Your S2 is definitely going to be better. And then through learning these statistics, you can sit down in your S2, statistically determine the situation, and predict what you should do to not commit an error. However, throughout the day, if you don't realize, you might think that a lot of times during the day you're sitting back and you're thinking, but most of the day we're acting on S1. So when you are driving, you see a green light, you go. Red light, you stop. Yellow light, slow down. You know, engaging conversation with people. Things like that. Those are all S1. You instinctively do them because you know that's what you've been doing your whole life. You just know that that's how it works. When you're in the classroom and you're thinking about something and you're learning something, that's S2 because you have to sit back, think, okay, what's the answer to this problem? What formula am I going to use for this? So on and so forth. An example that Kahneman uses that I thought was very interesting to illustrate this point is an insurance. So when there's a lot of terrorism going on, an insurance company, the airplane company actually, I don't remember the exact company name, but they offered something for their customers, which was, would you rather pay $100,000 for an insurance to fly? If you die, you go ahead and you get $100,000 sent to whoever it is you want, or Do you rather an $100,000 insurance if you die from a terrorist attack? The no-brainer is take the general insurance. If anything happens to you for any reason and you end up dying, you have $100,000 that's going to be sent to whoever it is that you are, or assigned to yourself. If it's only a terrorist attack, that narrows down, you know, it's not a general thing. It's only if there's a terrorist attack. And believe it or not, the studies indicate that the majority of people pick the terrorist attack. Just because people are so scared of that intuition kicks in. They're like, the only way I'm going to die on a plane flight because of what's going on with terrorism is through a terrorist attack. It's not going to be a crash. It's not going to be anything technical with the plane. It's a terrorist attack. So it has to be a terrorist insurance. And that's such a no-brainer. That's all S1 thinking, no S2 thinking. And there's the error that you see right there. Which is, when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's nuts that people really take it to that extent. Which comes to another point. He talks about, makes some comparisons. One of them that he uses is chess, the game of chess. And he says that the game of chess is considered an S2. So you might think, okay, well, when you're playing chess, it's an S1 because based on what move the person makes, you instinctively know to do this. But no, it's S2 because chess is not the same as a long-term or a medium-term forecast. Because in chess there are irregularities. There are things that happen on a regular basis which you can use to forecast the future or have a solid answer to whatever it is that you want to find the answer to. It's the same thing as when it comes to an algorithm and a scout. An algorithm is way more powerful because it uses specific regularities and equations and formulas to find an answer or to predict the future, which is way more accurate and it has a lot more means to being correct. So if you apply mechanical statistics, a mechanical statistics system to prediction, you will do better than what is called a clinical prediction. That's word for word what Kahneman says. So he's basically saying if you have some sort of equation that you know has to be applied depending on a certain kind of situation, the probability is that the outcome will be better than you just assuming something based on your intuition and thinking you're correct. The same thing, and another very, very good example uses the stock market. People are like, oh, he's so smart. He makes all this money off the stock market. And Kahneman argues that the stock market is not skill, it's all luck. It's all S1. Now, you can pay companies to determine trends, and based on those trends, figure out 5 seconds before something happens in the stock market, what's going to happen based on trends. So you spend thousands of dollars on studying trends so that you know how to predict the future. I thought that everything that this book had to say was very interesting. The video that I saw, however, was very helpful because it was him basically talking in an interview, and I thought that was great. But I wanted to end this with a question, which is something that I wanted to know. There's very, very little technicalities that determine when something is being S1 and something is being S2. And, I read this and I related it to a lot of everyday things that happen in my life. Something happens that you wouldn't expect and it gets you angry at the moment. How do you react? Do you react based on instinct, based on what you've been conditioned to do your whole entire life as growing up in the environment you're in? Or do you sit back and realize the environment I'm in right now is not the environment I was in when I was little, so I need to think about this and react differently? How do you control those emotions? How do you control that thought process? And it came down to a pretty good question, so I wanted to see what you guys thought about this. Let's say you're a guy or girl, whatever, and you've been training martial arts since you were a little boy, little girl, and you're 22 years of age now. You're in the highest rank you could possibly be for every kind of martial arts that you've been practicing for your lifetime. So you've been trained throughout the years to learn how to do all these different techniques and how to react to certain things. So it's all engraved in your brain. It's almost automatic. It's like a red light and a green light. Something happens and you know exactly what to do, when to do it, and how to do it perfectly. So let's say you're walking down the street and someone decides that they want to rob you. So their first reaction to wanting to rob you is they're going to try and punch you to, knock your senses out and then take it, whatever it is that you have. Him not knowing that you've been doing martial arts your whole life, your first reaction is, okay, a punch is happening. You're going to instinctively block the punch, grab his hand, I don't know, break his arm, punch him back, I don't know, whatever it is that you do when you're trained for that long to do something. And then you're going to end up solving the situation. Rather than if you're a person that hasn't been doing that your whole life, you may be lucky enough to instinctively get out of the way. You may get punched in the face. There's many outcomes that could happen. So my question is, if you're that guy that knows what to do exactly and instinctively gets out of the way of the punch and solves the situation, is that S1 or is that S2? Because if you think about it, you've been trained your whole life to do this, but at the same time, you've also sat back and learned about it. So you're instinctively acting on something that you've been learning. So yeah, I want to know what you guys thought about that, because I can also throw in the argument, someone that's been practicing jiu-jitsu their whole life, when they're rolling around on the floor with someone, although they might instinctively act on a move someone makes, when they're on the floor, and I've talked to people that do it, they're thinking about the whole thing. It's like a chess game, like, oh, what am I going to do now? I need to put my leg around here and my arm around here in order to get him in this position. So you're really thinking back and using your S2, like, okay, I have to do this based on this. It's something that you can't just do, you have to think about. But in the same time, when he tries to hook you on or something like that, you instinctively do the right thing because you're trained to do it. So where is the fine line drawn? When do you know if you're doing S1, when you're doing S2, and when you should be doing one and you should be doing the other? That's my presentation on Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I would love some feedback. Take care.